My parents spent my entire life orbiting my younger brother, but ignoring my wedding was the moment I finally stopped making excuses for them. 11 months ago, I married my partner of 6 years, Ethan, at a glasshouse conservatory outside Asheville, North Carolina. It was the small, storybook ceremony I had always imagined. Soft morning light, wildflowers, handwritten vows, and nearly everyone we loved gathered in one place. Nearly everyone. My parents and my brother, Nolan, were missing. The painful truth is that their empty seats did not shock me as much as they should have. Nolan, now 27, had always been the center of our family. Calling him the golden child barely covers it. To my parents, he was proof that they had done everything right. As a kid, he won spelling contests, science fairs, and student elections. In high school, he captained the swim team, played the lead in 2 musicals, and graduated as class president. He was charming, athletic, and perfectly aware of how easily people liked him. After college, he abandoned acting and moved into public relations, where he rose quickly. My parents celebrated every step as though he had won an international award. When Nolan appeared for 3 seconds in a local tourism commercial during college, they rented the private room of an expensive restaurant in Richmond, invited more than 60 people, ordered champagne, and displayed his professional headshot beside the cake. That framed photo still hangs over their fireplace. That same year, I completed my physical therapy degree with honors after years of clinical rotations, night shifts, and student debt. My mother glanced at the certificate and said, "That's nice, Claire." My father nodded without looking away from his phone. 10 minutes later, they were discussing which jacket Nolan should wear to his next audition. I learned early that my achievements were background noise. Today, Nolan is a regional communications director with a downtown office, a company SUV, and a salary my parents mention at every family gathering. I work at a rehabilitation hospital in Raleigh. I help stroke patients walk again, support people recovering from devastating accidents, and sometimes stay late because a frightened patient has no one else nearby. I am proud of what I do, but my parents have never introduced me without adding, "Nolan is the executive in the family." Their favoritism was not limited to careers. Growing up, my father constantly commented on my body. He pinched my arms, enrolled me in weight loss programs, and placed me on restrictive diets before I was old enough to understand what calories were. Whenever I protested, he compared me to Nolan. "Your brother never has to be reminded to stay fit. You could look more polished if you made the effort." By high school, I had mastered smiling as though those words did not hurt. Years later, therapy helped me understand that pretending was not the same as healing. I kept trying to become someone they might finally admire. I took electives my mother recommended, joined clubs my father thought looked impressive, and even auditioned for a college production because Nolan insisted performing would build confidence. I forgot half my lines. Nolan joked about it for years. Nothing changed. No matter what I accomplished, there was always some new reason he deserved more attention. By my late 20s, I finally stopped competing in a contest I had never agreed to enter. I focused on my career, built friendships with people who valued me, and kept conversations with my parents polite and shallow. They barely noticed the distance. They had Nolan to praise. Around that time, I met Ethan at a fundraising dinner for the rehabilitation center. A mutual friend seated us together, and within 20 minutes we were laughing about the terrible jazz band and stealing desserts from an unattended tray. He noticed things my family never had. My dry humor, my patience, the way I remembered details about people. He never compared me to anyone. He never suggested I should shrink, improve, or prove myself before being loved. After 6 years together, he proposed on a rainy Sunday night in our apartment. We were wearing sweatpants, eating Thai food, and watching the same crime series we had already seen twice. He paused the episode, took my hand, and asked whether I wanted to keep building this quiet, ordinary life with him forever. It was perfect. When I told my parents, their reaction should have warned me. My mother stared at the ring and asked whether we were moving too quickly. Then she suggested I should get serious about losing weight before choosing a dress. My father muttered something about weddings being overpriced and immediately changed the subject to Nolan's business trip to Lisbon. At our engagement dinner, Ethan noticed them whispering in a corner over my mother's phone. They barely spoke to his parents or any of our friends. Later, he told me he had overheard part of a call with Nolan. "This wasn't supposed to happen first," my mother had said. My father replied, "We always assumed Nolan would be married before Claire." When I questioned them the following day, they claimed they had simply been updating him on family news. I wanted to believe them, so I let it go. The warning signs continued during the planning. My mother had already created several elaborate inspiration boards for Nolan's future wedding, even though he was not engaged. Yet whenever I asked her opinion about venues, flowers, or invitations, she said she was too busy. Dress shopping hurt the most. I found a simple ivory gown with a soft skirt and fitted sleeves. For the first time in years, I looked in a mirror and genuinely felt beautiful. My mother studied me and said, "It's sensible. The cut hides the areas you'd probably want hidden." I did not cry until I reached the parking lot alone.
That day, I stopped asking for her approval.
My mother-in-law, Diane, ended up doing almost everything my own mother refused to do. She helped me compare venues, taste cakes, choose flowers, and fix the seating chart when 2 relatives canceled. 2 weeks before the ceremony, I broke down in her kitchen because the florist had mixed up our order. Diane made tea and reminded me that the marriage mattered more than the centerpieces. Before sending invitations, Ethan and I checked the guest list 3 times. We mailed formal cards and sent digital copies with tracking. I addressed their envelope myself. The online invitations showed that both of them had opened the message. Weeks passed without an RSVP. I called, texted, and emailed. Sometimes they ignored me. Other times, my mother said they were checking a few commitments, while my father suddenly remembered an urgent appointment whenever I mentioned the wedding directly. Nolan never replied at all. I tried not to let their silence consume me. Ethan's family filled every empty space with warmth. His sister organized a small bridal shower, his aunt made the table decorations, and his father offered to drive elderly guests from their hotel. Nobody commented, but I noticed the looks whenever someone asked about my mother. The pity hurt almost as much as the rejection. On the morning of the wedding, I kept checking my phone. Part of me still imagined my parents appearing at the last minute, apologizing and taking their seats in the front row. They did not. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Sunlight poured through the conservatory windows, the garden smelled of jasmine, and Ethan cried before I even reached him. Our friends laughed during the vows because he accidentally said "all my lives" instead of "all my life," then decided it sounded better and refused to correct himself. For a while, I forgot the empty seats. Then came the parent dance. My father-in-law, Thomas, quietly asked whether I would allow him to stand in. I said yes, and he held me with such kindness that I nearly broke down against his shoulder. He told me he was proud to have me in the family. Those words should have made me happy. Instead, they reminded me that my own father had never said them. That night, after the reception ended and Ethan and I returned to our hotel, I finally cried. Not delicate movie tears, deep sobs that left me struggling to breathe. Ethan held me without trying to explain their behavior or convince me that it did not matter. After our honeymoon, I called my parents and demanded an answer. My mother sounded offended. She claimed they had never received a proper invitation and had been devastated to discover the wedding had happened without them. My father added that they had checked the mailbox every day for weeks. I was speechless. While they accused me of carelessness, I opened our delivery records. The digital invitation had been viewed, the paper envelope had been delivered and signed for. They were lying. The proof was undeniable.
I should have confronted them immediately, but old habits are hard to break. Instead of exposing the lie, I apologized for the misunderstanding and ended the call believing I had somehow failed again. When Ethan came home, he found me at the kitchen table with the delivery confirmation on my laptop. I explained everything. He listened, then asked why I was protecting people who had deliberately hurt me. That question stayed with me. Over the next few days, we reviewed everything since our engagement. Their shocked expressions, refusal to help, unanswered messages, and comments about Nolan being expected to marry first. The pattern was clear. My parents had not missed the wedding because of a lost invitation. They had chosen not to attend because my happiness disrupted the order they had created in their minds. I was the disappointing daughter. Nolan was supposed to reach every milestone first. Months later, I learned through my cousin Marissa that Nolan had proposed to his girlfriend, Paige. My parents became enthusiastic wedding planners. My mother posted photographs of venue tours, private suit fittings, and champagne tastings in a family group chat from which I had been removed. My father bragged that they were reserving the most expensive ballroom in Richmond and hiring a chef who appeared on television. Each detail sounded like a cruel imitation of the support they had denied me. What they did not expect was the reaction from our relatives. People started asking why my parents had not attended my ceremony. I never campaigned against them. I simply told the truth. They received invitations, ignored every attempt to confirm, and later claimed nothing had arrived. Cousins were disgusted. An aunt told me she had suspected favoritism for years, but had never realized how far it went. Another relative said she would not attend Nolan's engagement party unless my parents apologized to me first. Soon, invitations to his events began receiving polite refusals. My parents blamed me immediately. They called one evening and accused me of trying to destroy Nolan's wedding because I was jealous. My mother demanded that I contact every relative and correct the story before the family's reputation was damaged. What exactly should I correct? I asked. The delivery receipt? The messages you ignored? The fact that your seats were empty? My father said I was twisting private family matters to make them look cruel. I told him I had not asked anyone to boycott anything. People were making their own decisions after hearing the truth. If the truth damages your reputation, I said, maybe the problem is not the person telling it. There was silence, followed by my mother accusing me of always wanting attention. That was when something inside me shifted. For years, I believed one perfect explanation might make them understand. But they understood. They simply did not care how deeply their choices had hurt me. I ended the call without apologizing.
2 weeks later, after reading messages from relatives who supported me, I decided to confront my parents face to face. I was tired of hearing that I had ruined Nolan's celebration while nobody acknowledged what they had done to mine. The moment I arrived at their house, my mother accused me of spreading lies. My father said the family was turning against them because I had manipulated everyone. For once, I did not defend myself in the usual way. "You're right," I said. "I am jealous." They both went silent. I am not jealous of Nolan's title, money, appearance, or wedding. I am jealous of the unconditional love you gave him while making me believe I had to earn every scrap of affection. My mother immediately insisted they had treated us equally. Something in me finally broke open. I listed every memory I had spent years minimizing. My college graduation dinner had been canceled because Nolan received a callback for a commercial. They bought him an expensive tuxedo for prom while telling me they could not afford several textbooks I needed. They missed my high school honor ceremony because he had a minor cold, yet somehow drove him to swim practice the next morning. I reminded them that my mother had spent years saving wedding ideas for a son who was not engaged, then refused to help plan her daughter's actual ceremony. I described looking at their empty chairs, dancing with Thomas instead of my father, and inventing excuses when friends quietly asked where my family was. Neither of them apologized. Instead, my mother demanded to know why I had never spoken up before, as though every past attempt had not ended with her calling me sensitive. My father accused me of being vindictive for discussing family matters with relatives. Then my mother said the sentence that made everything clear. "We always knew you were insecure about Nolan's success, but we never imagined you would punish him by sabotaging his wedding. This is not how we raised you." Even while I was describing their absence from my wedding, their concern remained Nolan. I looked at them and felt strangely calm. "You did raise me," I said. "You raised me to believe his achievements mattered more, that your image mattered more, and that my feelings were inconvenient. But you also taught me something you never intended. I deserve better than this." My father's expression hardened. He said that if I had decided they were terrible parents, perhaps we should stop pretending to be a family. My mother added that I had always wanted to be the center of attention and had chosen to play the victim. In the past, I would have begged them to reconsider. I would have apologized just to keep the peace. This time, I stood up, said goodbye, and walked out. I cried in my car, but the tears felt different. They were not the desperate tears of a child trying to be chosen. They felt like grief finally leaving my body. For once, their rejection no longer felt like evidence of my failure. When I reached home, Ethan was waiting on the balcony. He took one look at my face and opened his arms. I told him everything, including their threat to cut me off. "They are never going to change, are they?" I asked. He squeezed my hand. "Probably not. But you have." He was right. The version of me who spent decades chasing approval had disappeared. Accepting that my parents would never become the people I needed was painful, but less painful than hoping they might. For the first time, I stopped caring about Nolan's wedding, whether relatives attended, whether the ballroom remained booked, whether my parents preserved their reputation. None of it belonged to me anymore. 3 days later, Nolan decided otherwise. He sent me a message written like a corporate warning. "What you said to Mom and Dad was completely inappropriate," he began. "They supported both of us through every stage of life. You cannot accuse them of being bad parents simply because you are dissatisfied with your choices." He continued by saying that my wedding may not have been the celebration I imagined, but that gave me no right to interfere with his. According to him, there was nothing wrong with wanting an event that honored people who had worked hard to meet certain standards. "Not everything has to be a competition, Claire," he finished. The irony was almost impressive. Years earlier, his words would have sent me into days of self-doubt. This time, I read the message once, blocked his number, and returned to work. Nolan had never tolerated being ignored. A few hours later, Ethan called me, laughing so hard he could barely explain what happened. Since my brother could not reach me, he found Ethan's number and sent him several paragraphs about our family. The first message began politely. "As Claire's brother and someone concerned about our family's well-being, I feel obligated to contact you." It quickly became insulting. Nolan told Ethan that, as my husband, he had a responsibility to help me behave more appropriately. He described family relationships as complicated and suggested that someone with my emotional sensitivity might not understand the bigger picture.
He was lecturing a senior civil engineer as if Ethan were a confused child. Then Nolan revealed his goal. He wrote that a relationship with successful relatives like him could be useful for Ethan's future. He claimed my behavior was damaging my opportunities and, by extension, my husband's. Ethan found the manipulation hilarious. He thinks his job title is a bargaining chip, he said. Does he know anything about me? That evening, we read the messages together. Instead of feeling humiliated, I laughed. Seeing Nolan use the same tactics on someone unaffected by them exposed how predictable he was. His achievements had never made him secure. Beneath the polished career and practiced confidence, he was still the teenager who needed other people to feel smaller so he could feel important.
Ethan's response was perfect. He did not argue or let Nolan pull him into the drama. "Thank you for your concern about Claire's well-being," he wrote. "As her husband, my priority is supporting her happiness, not controlling her behavior. Any future concerns should be addressed to her directly. Take care." Nolan replied almost immediately. "I see she has turned you against the family too. Do not say I did not warn you when this damages both of you." Ethan blocked him. The failed attempt only strengthened my decision to stay away. Nolan had tried to use my husband the same way he once used classmates against me. In high school, whenever I challenged him, he told people I was jealous. Different decade, same strategy. Now I could recognize it without questioning myself. 10 years earlier, those messages would have made me panic. 5 years earlier, they would have made me furious. Now, they only made me tired. Ethan and I laughed, ordered pizza, and booked a cabin near Boone. For the first time, family drama did not control our home. 2 weeks later, Marissa called with an update. My parents had begun contacting relatives individually to repair their reputation. Their new story was that I had intentionally sent the invitations to outdated addresses so I could exclude them and pretend to be abandoned. That made little sense. They had lived in the same house for 24 years and used the same email accounts for as long as I could remember. According to Marissa, my mother showed people a screenshot of an email she claimed I had sent. The timestamp was wrong, the formatting did not match our invitation, and the message named a venue we had considered but never booked. Their evidence exposed the lie better than anything I could have said. Instead of convincing relatives, their campaign encouraged people to share their own stories. One uncle remembered my mother hijacking his anniversary dinner to announce Nolan's promotion. My aunt recalled a baptism reception where my parents spent the afternoon showing photographs from Nolan's college play. A cousin said my father once left her graduation party early because Nolan wanted help buying a car. The pattern had always been visible. I was simply the first person to stop pretending it was normal. Several relatives who had planned to participate in Nolan's wedding began withdrawing. One cousin declined to serve as an usher. An aunt who had offered access to a private venue suddenly said it was unavailable. A family friend who owned a luxury clothing shop reported a scheduling conflict and could no longer provide custom suits. My parents blamed every cancellation on me. The situation exploded at a family barbecue the following weekend. The recordings spread through the family within hours. My mother accused me of plotting against Nolan, while my father warned everyone not to believe one-sided stories. Instead of protecting their reputation, the video showed how obsessed they were with controlling it. Relatives who had stayed neutral began calling me. Some apologized, while others admitted they had noticed the favoritism for years. My father's older brother, Uncle Grant, affected me most. He said he had watched my parents dismiss me since childhood and regretted never challenging them. "Missing your wedding was when I realized keeping the peace only protected the people causing the harm," he told me. He and his family decided not to attend Nolan's wedding events. I did not celebrate the cancellations, but I refused to accept responsibility for consequences created by choices I had not made. I had not fabricated invitations, forced my mother to shout at relatives, or persuaded Nolan to send insulting messages. They had done that themselves. The truth was doing the work for me. Every attempt my parents made to repair the story revealed another contradiction. First, they claimed no invitation existed. Then they said it went to the wrong address. Later, they insisted they stayed away because I excluded them from planning. Each explanation disproved the one before it. Nolan began calling relatives too. He described me as unstable and bitter, but his tone only made people more uncomfortable. One cousin said he spent 20 minutes explaining why his career made him a better judge of family matters than everyone else. The harder they tried to control the narrative, the faster it collapsed. Meanwhile, my life became quieter. Without their constant messages, I slept better. The tension in my shoulders began to disappear. I no longer rehearsed conversations in my head or wondered which achievement might make them proud. I spent more time with Ethan, Diane, and friends who made affection feel simple. Nobody required me to perform for a place at the table. During our weekend in Boone, Ethan and I hiked to a lookout before sunset. Standing above the mountains, I realized I had treated my family's approval like oxygen. I thought losing it would destroy me. Instead, I could finally breathe. A few days after we returned, Nolan's fiancée, Paige, contacted me privately. I assumed she wanted to defend him. I expected another cruel message. She said she had begun questioning what Nolan and my parents told her. According to them, I had refused to invite the family, staged everything for sympathy, and convinced relatives to boycott their events. Paige had seen the recording of my mother's outburst and heard conflicting versions from several relatives. "I'm not asking you to involve yourself again," she wrote. "I just need to know what actually happened."
For several minutes, I stared at the screen. Then I sent her the invitation records, delivery confirmation, and unanswered messages.
Paige replied the next morning. "Thank you," she wrote. "This is very different from what I was told." I did not ask what she planned to do. I refused to become part of another confrontation. I told her she could contact me if she needed clarification, then put my phone away. By that evening, the family group chats were exploding. Paige had confronted Nolan with the records. At first, he claimed I had manipulated the screenshots. When she pointed out that the delivery confirmation came directly from the career and invitation platform, he changed tactics. He said the real issue was that my parents had felt unwelcome and that I should have tried harder to include them. Then Paige asked why they had repeatedly said no invitation was ever sent. Nolan had no answer. 2 days later, Paige postponed the wedding. She said she needed time to reconsider the relationship after seeing how easily Nolan lied. My parents immediately blamed me. My mother emailed that I had finally achieved what I wanted, ruining my brother's future because I could not tolerate seeing him happy. My father said I had exploited Paige's doubts. I did not respond. For years, silence had meant fear. Now it meant a boundary. Nolan tried reaching me through new numbers, social media accounts, and my work email. First, he demanded that I tell Paige everything had been exaggerated. Then he offered to forgive me if I helped repair the situation. Finally, he accused Ethan of controlling me and said I would regret choosing my husband over my blood family. I saved the messages and blocked every account. The wedding venue was released soon afterward. Deposits were lost, and the custom orders my parents had boasted about were canceled. None of it made me happy. Watching another relationship collapse was not satisfying, even when the people involved had hurt me. But I understood that I had not caused it. Paige did not postpone the wedding because I told a dramatic story. She postponed it because Nolan lied and refused responsibility when shown proof. A week later, Paige called me. Her voice was tired but calm. She said Nolan had admitted that my parents received the invitation. He knew they planned to skip the ceremony, but supported the decision because he believed my marriage would draw attention away from his career announcement that month. He had even helped my mother invent the excuse about the missing envelope. Hearing that should have shocked me. Instead, it confirmed everything. Paige said she had ended the engagement. She apologized for believing their version and thanked me for answering honestly without pressuring her. "I think they expected me to join the system," she said. I nearly did. After the call, I sat quietly for a long time. Ethan found me at the kitchen table and asked whether I was all right. "I think I am," I said. "I finally know I was never imagining it." At last, the pieces finally made sense. The truth hurt, but uncertainty had hurt more.
My parents made one final attempt to pull me back into the chaos. They appeared at our house on a Sunday afternoon without warning. Through the window, I saw my mother clutching a folder while my father stood behind her with the rigid expression he wore whenever he expected to win. Ethan asked whether I wanted him to send them away. For a moment, the old fear returned. Then I remembered the empty seats, the false invitation story, and every demand that I repair their damage. I opened the door, but did not invite them inside. My mother said they were ready to move forward if I corrected what I had told Paige and the family. She opened the folder and showed me a statement they expected me to sign. It claimed there had been a misunderstanding, that they never intentionally skipped the wedding, and that stress had caused me to exaggerate. "You came here for a confession," I said, "not a relationship." My father told me this was my final chance to save the family. I replied that a family worth saving would not require me to lie about being hurt. "After everything we sacrificed for you," she said, "this is how you repay us?" That sentence had controlled me for years. This time, it had no power. "I am not discussing this again," I said. "Do not come to my home without permission. Do not contact my workplace, and do not ask other people to pressure me." My father called me ungrateful. My mother began crying loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. Neither apologized. I closed the door. I was done protecting their lie. They remained on the porch for several minutes, then left the unsigned statement behind. Ethan read the title, Family Clarification, and asked whether we should frame it. We shredded it instead. Since then, I have had no direct contact with my parents or Nolan. I do not need reports about who is angry, which event was canceled, or what explanation my mother is offering now. Paige moved to another city and started over. We exchange occasional messages, but I keep a respectful distance. Her decisions are hers, just as mine are finally mine. Ethan and I recently celebrated our first anniversary at the same conservatory where we married. We stood near the front row, where 2 empty seats had once felt like proof that I was unwanted. This time, I saw them differently. Those chairs were empty because my parents chose not to show up, but the room had been full of friends, warmth, laughter, and people who loved me without requiring me to become someone else. For most of my life, I focused on the 2 people who were absent instead of everyone who stayed. I do not anymore. I once believed healing would mean my parents understanding what they had done. Now I know healing does not require their agreement. It means trusting my memory, protecting the life I built, and refusing to apologize for telling the truth.
They wanted a perfect family image with Nolan at the center. I wanted a real family. It turns out, I already have one.